On the 1st of March 1945, the British troops of the 2nd Battalion, the King's Shropshire Light Infantry of the 3rd Division, launched an assault against the village of Kervenheim in western Germany. Departing from its start line at 0900, the battalion moved out from a woods and advanced across a series of fields to the north of the village, with Y Company on the left and Z Company on the right, whilst the Churchill tanks of No. 2 Squadron of the 4th Battalion, the Coldstream Guards, followed up closely behind in support of the infantry. For the first few minutes, the advance proceeded as planned, until suddenly heavy German small arms and machine gun fire began to be received from a farmhouse known as Baumshof, which the Germans had turned into a strongpoint. Immediately as the enemy position opened up, the men of Y and Z companies went to ground and returned fire. At the same time, the supporting Churchills moved up and engaged the German positions with their turret and hull-mounted machine guns, which resulted in the enemy becoming suppressed and enabled a platoon from Z Company to move up and mount an attack on the strongpoint. Spearheading this assault was Private James Stokes, who, with complete disregard for his own safety, charged alone through the German positions and stormed through the front door of the farmhouse. For his actions that day, Private Stokes will be awarded the Victoria Cross, the citation for which states, "Private Stokes, without waiting for any orders, got up and firing from the hip, dashed through the enemy fire and was seen to disappear inside the farm building. The enemy fire stopped and Private Stokes reappeared with 12 prisoners. During this operation, he was wounded in the neck." Returning to his unit, Private Stokes handed the 12 German prisoners over to his platoon commander, who ordered the private to make his way to the Battalion A post to be treated for his neck wound. To this, the private refused and insisted that he stay with his platoon. In the end, after a brief back and forth, it was agreed that Private Stokes would be allowed to stay with his unit for the remainder of the attack on Kervenheim. In the minutes that followed, Private Stokes' platoon carried out a brief reorganisation before they moved off to clear a nearby barn in which a group of German infantrymen were holding out. Once again, Private James Stokes took point and decided to storm and clear the barn on his own. His Victoria Cross citation continues. Private Stokes rushed the house by himself, firing from the hip. He was seen to drop his rifle and fall to the ground wounded. However, a moment later, he got to his feet again, picked up his rifle and continued to advance, despite the most intense fire which not only covered himself but the rest of the platoon. He entered the house and all firing from it ceased. He subsequently rejoined his platoon, bringing 5 more prisoners. With the capture of this barn, the German strongpoint at Baumshof had been reduced, and the remainder of Z Company, together with the troops of Y Company, were finally able to get forward and consolidate the area. After a brief pause, the attack towards Kervenheim resumed at midday on the 1st of March, with a set of houses on the village outskirts forming the next objective for Z Company. However, it was as the company was preparing to move off that Private James Stokes ran out into no man's land and charged towards the enemy-held line, firing his weapon from his hip and coming under heavy German fire. After covering approximately 200 metres, Private Stokes was hit and fell to the ground, but nonetheless, he continued to fire his weapon at the enemy until the rest of Z Company had got forward to carry out the attack on the houses. Private Stokes' citation continues. As the company passed him in the final charge, he raised his hand and shouted goodbye. Private Stokes was found to have been wounded 8 times in the upper part of the body. Private Stokes' one objective throughout this action was to kill the enemy at whatever personal risk. His magnificent courage, devotion to duty, and splendid example inspired all those round him and ensured the success of the attack at a critical moment. Although Z Company went on to capture the houses, Private James Stokes would succumb to his wounds shortly after and was declared as killed in action on the afternoon of the 1st of March 1945. Undoubtedly, the courage, selflessness and initiative shown by Private James Stokes was vital to the British success at Kervenheim. This is especially true for the Baumshof farm, where Private Stokes single-handedly cleared 2 buildings and captured 17 German soldiers, thus enabling his company to move up and consolidate the position. Without Private Stokes, it is certain that Z Company would have not only sustained heavy casualties in clearing the strongpoint, but would have been significantly delayed in pushing on to Kervenheim. For his actions, Private James Stokes was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross on the 17th of April 1945. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe so that you never miss one of my future videos.